The SNES Classic Edition came out back in 2017 and quickly saw a ton of activity from the modding community. I just poked my head back in recently and was floored. It looks like compression's improved, you can add your own boot screens or background music, really just a lot of cool customization options. And of course, you can add games to the console. Since then, the console has kind of become less of a big deal. There's not as much reason for it with the SNES Switch Online after all, and so weirdly, the SNES Classic Edition itself has become kind of retro. But it's still new to me, and maybe it's still new to you. It came with 21 games, and so here's 9 suggestions to get you to a more well-rounded collection and a more well-rounded number of 30 games. So first, Chrono Trigger. I'm not going to lie, the SNES Classic has Earthbound, Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy III, and Super Mario RPG already, and so the last thing I think it needs is more RPGs. But here's the thing, Chrono Trigger is widely considered the best one of all, and if I omitted it from this list, I'd hear all about it, and probably rightfully so. So here you go, here's another RPG if you need to scratch that itch even further. Second is Turtles in Time. There's 21 games and 2 controllers, but only 8 of these are 2-player by my count. So additionally, there's no beat 'em ups on the console, and that's one of my favorite genres and a staple of any SNES collection. Turtles in Time is the best beat 'em up game ever made, and it's 2-player, so it's a shoo-in for a game to add to the SNES Classic Edition. Now third is Darius Twin. There's no shmups on the SNES Classic either, and they were also early staples of the Super Nintendo. I would recommend Darius Twin because it's a simultaneous 2-player shmup from 1991 that'll make great use of that second controller. Fourth is Kirby's Avalanche. The puzzle genre is a huge missing hole in the SNES Classic as well. So my recommendation for 2-player puzzle action is Kirby's Avalanche, which I think might be called Puyo Puyo in Japan. Anyway, it's a 2-player experience that gets competitive, heated up, and fun fast. Definitely check this one out. Fifth is Looney Tunes Speedball. You gotta have at least one sports game too, so the nostalgic choice is probably NBA Jam because it was such a big deal back in the day, but there's a similar game in Looney Tunes Speedball that might actually be a little bit better based on some of the goofy power-ups and playing as timeless Looney Tunes characters rather than the not quite as timeless Vlade Divac. Although let's all be real here, Stockton and Malone are timeless. Still, this is another great 2-player game. It's probably a good way to introduce your kids to NBA Jam. Sixth is Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I'm not sure if Nintendo would have put a game with horror elements onto a classic console, but luckily, you don't have those same restraints. So if you're looking for a 2-player, kind of puzzly shooter, you can hardly beat Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It's definitely a game that benefits from save states too, so 55 levels on this one, great co-op action. 7 is Donkey Kong Country 2. It's awesome that Donkey Kong Country is on the SNES Classic, but for a lot of people, the sequel is actually the better game. So if you need more 2-player platforming action, you can't go wrong with Donkey Kong Country 2, and even if you're lukewarm on the original, you should try this one out to see if it's more your speed, especially with the second player. Number 8 is Sunset Riders. Okay, so run to the right, hit everything that moves, and don't get hit. These are the 3 rules of the perfect video game experience. It's also the rules that Sunset Riders plays by. This arcade port has been called Cowboy Contra, which to me sounds like a massive compliment. It's even better with the second player and a huge improvement over the Sega Genesis version. And number 9 is King of Dragons. So last, but certainly not least, we can't forget Capcom and how many great games they made for the Super Nintendo. This is a beat-em up with some RPG elements. It also features 5 very different characters to play as. It's also 2-player. If you finish Turtles in Time and want something a bit different that's almost as good, King of Dragons should be your next stop and will bring you to a full 30 games with a little more balance and a lot more cooperative play. Have fun.